Blessings, everyone. Welcome to Sunday Night Alive, Spiritual Perspectives. So happy to be with you tonight. I'm streaming to you live from Naples, Florida. We have a wonderful topic tonight. Well, maybe not everyone thinks it's wonderful, but I do. Integrity and congruence. Integrity with your life and congruence with your soul. If you are here with me, please say hello. Let me know if you can hear me all right. And hmm. So, spiritual perspectives is a uh, a term I'm using to describe coming into a way of viewing life more from the inside out than the outside in. More from the perspective of the ego and less from the perspective of the ego and more from the perspective of the spirit. It's very, very important that we move into a spiritual way of life for many, many reasons. One, because our planet is in a very interesting space and place. And if we're here, we've come here in order to contribute to the raising of consciousness everywhere. So I'm very, very happy to be here with you tonight and to share this topic with you. So for those of you who don't know me, my name is Reverend Denise Schubert. I am the founder and director of A Life of Spiritual Power. I'm also part of the spiritual leadership team at the Unity of Naples Church in Naples, Florida. And my whole purpose for being alive is to raise consciousness, is to move into a space of empowerment, and to make sure that as we're navigating our spiritual lives, that we are happy, prosperous, healthy. If we're going to do the work, it should be reflected in our lives. Yes? Do you agree? Say hello to me if you're here. I can see you're out there. Just let me know who you are, so I'm not talking to myself here. Hi, Jan. So great to see you. So, I'm going to speak a word of blessing just to get us centered and anchored together. But this topic is really important for so many reasons, not necessarily what you might think, because integrity in life is important, but congruence with your soul is super important. So, before we dive in, let me just speak a word of blessing upon us. So, hi, Les. So good to see you again, always. Oh, all right. So, take a breath with me. Take a breath. That's wonderful. Take a breath, maybe the deepest breath of your day. We breathe, we center ourselves by breathing. We center ourselves because taking the breath and being aware of the breath allows us to go inside, allows us to turn away from the world, and allows us to pay attention to our heart space, to our emotional space, to who we are and where we are. And so I just invite you into that moment right now. And I join you here live from Naples, Florida, centering ourselves, opening our hearts, opening our minds, becoming receptive to some good, some idea that will expand our consciousness, that will raise our vibration, that will allow us to move into a more extraordinary experience of living. And so, for all the blessings of our being here tonight by divine appointment. So if you're here, we could all be watching TV, we could all be doing happy hour, but we're not. We're here with each other. And so let us have that being together count. And so for this and the blessings to come, we do give thanks. We let it be, and so it is. Amen. So, yeah, so listen, integrity is a very interesting topic because remember that we're here talking about spiritual perspectives, not ego perspectives. spiritual perspectives. And spiritual perspectives means that we're looking at these topics, we're looking at these conversations, we're looking at these ideas more from the spirit than from the ego. So, integrity from the ego's perspective means something very, very specific, which is to keep our word primarily. So, the dictionary definition of perspective is this: a state of being whole, entire, or undiminished, sound, unimpaired, and in perfect condition. You might think about that in terms of a bicycle. So, a bicycle um, has wheels with spokes. And if all the spokes are in place and the wheels are in place, then the bicycle is in perfect condition. If you take out a spoke, then it might still work, but not as well as it would have worked had all the spokes been in place. So this unimpaired condition has to do with our being all of the spokes of our own life are working and we're paying attention to them. Now, congruence means an agreement or harmony with. Now, let's see if we can put the perspective of the ego to bed a little bit. So, um, integrity from the ego's perspective really kind of means about fitting into the world, doing what you said you would do, keeping your agreements, not breaking your promises. Um, from the ego, it's about coming from the viewpoint of the personality, doing the right thing. It almost always has a moral implication. So to be out of integrity from the ego's perspective means you've broken your word somewhere. The problem with that is that depending on who you are, where you live, what your culture is, what your religion is, being out of integrity means different things depending on your circumstances. So, for example, if you are a Seventh-day Adventist or a Mormon, eating meat or drinking alcohol could be a pretty significant breach of integrity. Now, is eating meat wrong? No, of course not. Is it wrong to the Seventh-day Adventists? It's against their religion. So when we're dealing with living a spiritually balanced life, hi Toby, when we're living a spiritually balanced life, we're wanting to move outside of the mores of what it means to be human. Now, this does not mean that being in integrity with your commitments or being in integrity with your religion or being in integrity with what you've said you would do is a bad thing. You know, in Africa, if you're part of the Zulu tribe and you want to marry a Maasai woman, you will probably be judged as being out of integrity with those rules of society. But I'm not here, and you're not here, I don't think, to be in compliance with society. Because to be in compliance with society isn't necessarily a really, really great thing. You know, the problem with, I'm going to call them secular, the problem with our secular agreements, it's almost like marriage, till death do us part. Listen, if we were going to burn in hell for not keeping our marriage agreements, well, I'm in very deep trouble. And so is about 80% of all Americans, because most American marriages end in divorce. So I don't really want to deal with integrity too much about that, because right and wrong, good and evil are not things of God. They are things of human society. And it's not that they're not important, because if you want to run a business, if you don't keep your agreements, if you don't make promises and keep your promises, you're not going to do very well. So we're not negating the necessity of the agreements of living. But my topic tonight is integrity for your life congruence for your soul. So oftentimes in our daily living, we make commitments, we make promises that aren't necessarily in congruence with our deeper, more soulful commitments. Sometimes we say yes when we mean no. Sometimes we say no when we mean yes. Sometimes sometimes we're not authentic because we want to fit in. We don't want to look stupid or foolish. We won't, we want to fit into society properly. And I'm so for fitting into society. So by all means, do uh, do keep your word. Do give your word and keep your word. It makes you trustworthy. It makes you a person of substance. But what I'm really interested in is our souls. Now, in order to do that, in order to be congruent with your soul, you have to understand why you're here. You have to understand why you came here. Now, I would say to you that if we're here, that there are no accidents, that from a spiritual perspective, you have chosen to be here. Your soul has chosen to be here for its own purposes, whether that's to experience joy, prosperity, health, to grow in patience or love, all of those things. Um, but above all else, I would say that you are made in the image and likeness of love. That God is love, you and I are love. So whenever we are out of congruence or out of integrity with why we came here, we will suffer. So I want to tell you two stories. I was a heavy smoker most of my life. And when I was in my 40s and I started my spiritual journey, and I had tried to quit smoking many, many times. I did because it was socially acceptable when I started smoking. It was socially unacceptable when I quit smoking. Um, but long before I was able to quit, I tried to quit. I tried to quit because I thought it was ruining my health. I tried to quit because it was uh, people were against smoking because of the smell, because of uh, the the what it meant in society. Like they started no smoking in restaurants and bars, but I was unsuccessful. Except for one day, I was early in my spiritual journey, and I was living in Los Angeles. I was on my way to the LA airport, and I was smoking, and I was listening to a Christian radio station, which in my early days I was soaking up all kinds of religions and theological ideas. And this young Hispanic preacher was talking about how the body is a holy temple, and that anything you would do to desecrate the body would be to desecrate the holiness of who we are. And there was something in that sermon where I caught that my smoking was out of congruence with my commitments. So I had a commitment to be pro-life. I had a commitment to support people to live outrageous, bodacious, amazing, healthy, prosperous lives. And I caught in that moment that for me to smoke was the antithesis of who I wanted to be perceived as or show up as in life. Now, by the way, if you're a smoker, I'm not judging smoking. I'm talking about soulful commitments here. Uh, and that, and in that moment, I knew that I would quit smoking and that I would quit smoking successfully and that it would be easy because all of a sudden I was very clear about my soul's purpose, different than my ego's purpose. when you get married and they say till death do you part, or when you say yes to taking a job, or you say yes to a volunteer position, these are not soulful, necessarily lifelong commitments. They are part of our growth and unfolding as beings. So we have the right and the responsibility in every stage of our life to alter our commitments in life based on where we are evolving in consciousness. Now, I would say that most people, as a minister and as a spiritual teacher, as a spiritual leader, I would say that it takes a minute to understand what you really, 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 really care about in life. That it takes a minute to separate ourselves from our secular commitments in life, from our culture, or from our family, or from our religion. I mean, the problem is to have a commitment based on looking good or being right or fitting in may or may not necessarily have anything to do with your soul's calling, may not have anything to do with the reason or the purpose that you decided to come to this planet and incarnate. When we are not paying attention to our soul's call and paying too much attention to being fitting into society, it leads us to down a road of sadness, and it leads us down a road of purposelessness or emptiness. So I encourage all of us, I encourage you to take a minute or a month or maybe even a year or maybe even more to answer the question, what do I, what do you, what do you really, really care about? What matters to you? What makes your soul sing? What is your purpose? Like, if you could do anything in your lifetime, what would you do? How would you show up? Now, these are incredibly complex questions that we're not encouraged to ask and answer in our lifetimes normally. But my role is to ask them. And my role is to encourage you to look and see where you're feeling inauthentic. Like the world may think you're great and you may think you're great and everyone thinks you're doing fine except that you're not happy or you're not fulfilled or you're feeling empty. Because I can almost promise you that it has to do with being out of congruence with your highest intentions. I remember reading um, something in one of, I don't know, somewhere, that integrity is so critical to not only on an ego level, but also on a soul level. So I don't really want to separate them too much because they're both equally as important. But if you have a can of pure white paint, so part of the definition of integrity is wholeness, undiminished workability, whole, perfect, and complete. That's what we say about us, right? That we are whole, perfect, and complete. Whole, perfect, and complete means that nothing's missing, nothing's broken, nothing's out of integrity, nothing's out of alignment, that we are in our action, our thinking, our speaking, and our actions congruent with who we say we are. And it's kind of like, imagine yourself to be a bucket of white paint, and that white paint is pristine and pure. And you might be able to go out of integrity for a minute, like a drop of red paint in a bucket of white paint. So if you put a drop of red paint in a bucket of white paint, you'll never notice it. And if you do it again, you will never notice it. And if you do it again, you will never notice it. But eventually, if you put enough drops of red paint into that bucket of white paint, it will begin to not be white. It'll begin to be pink. Now, that's kind of like us when we break our agreements, when we're going against our soul's commitments, when I actually don't want this to be too complicated. So, your job description as a unique and individualized expression of God is to be loving, kind, and compassionate. That's it. So, no matter what happens in life, our job is to be loving. Our job is to be kind. Our job is to be compassionate. Our job is to bring forth the best in us and the best in other people. So, every time you don't do that, every time you're mean or nasty or judgmental or you injure someone emotionally, that's like a drop of red paint in the bucket of white. And the more and more that happens, the less and less yourself you become. So this it isn't a moral question at all. It is a spiritual question. It is, it is a compatibility with your soul question, because your life, your happiness, your peace, your companionship, your work, your creativity, your peace of mind, your sense of well-being depends on your being consistent and congruent with the spirit within you. So it's not nothing. It's kind of everything. Um, this quote, I have a quote for you from Werner Erhard. He says, in every moment, the choice of who to be and what to, we, in every moment, we have the choice of who to be and what to do. I'm missing some words in there, but you get the point. We have a choice of who to be and what to do. Are we going to be loving, or are we going to be jealous? Are we going to be compassionate, or are we going to be selfish? Are we going to be generous, or are we going to be stingy? These are choices you and I make every moment and every day. He says integrity is not a place where we arrive, but is how we steer the ship. So it's how we choose to navigate our way through life. So I love this other quote, that well-being is not a condition of the body, but it is reflected into the experience of your body through your consciousness. So if what we're wanting, and we are wanting it, I promise you, that if you, that we're wanting to feel powerful, poised, confident, loving, bodacious, connected, we're wanting to be part of the solutions and not part of the problem. We're wanting to leave this planet in a healthy state of well-being for our children and grandchildren. We're wanting to feel better. We're wanting to give up loneliness and addiction and depression. We're wanting to give up our extra weight. We're wanting to give up all the things that contribute to our sense of lack and limitation, worry, doubt, and fear. So this conversation about congruence and integrity is important. It's important on a ego level because in addition to wanting to live spiritual lives, we're wanting to be successful in the world. And to be successful in the workplace, to be successful in your relationships, to be successful at losing those 5 pounds, you've got to be able to commit, to give your word, and then to live, to take a stand for the word that you give and to live by it. So on a more mundane, I mean, if you want to lose 10 pounds, and you find yourself eating a cow or an entire chocolate cake, you are diminished in your power, because what you are doing will not be consistent with the commitments that you've made. And if we are nothing if we are not our commitments in life. Like, who can you be counted on to be? Now, we don't trust ourselves very much, which is probably the bigger issue. But commitment's not our topic tonight. Our topic is really being in alignment with the commitments that we've made. So I do encourage you in all ways to get to speak your word, to be true to your word. If you and I have an agreement to have dinner tomorrow, it doesn't work to not show up, right? But just because you and I have an agreement to have dinner tomorrow doesn't mean we have to have dinner tomorrow. You are more than welcome to call in advance of dinner and say, something's come up for me. I cannot make it. Can we reschedule to next week? That is being in integrity with your word. If you give your word to yourself to quit smoking or lose weight or to find a new job or to walk every day, every time you don't keep that commitment and you don't renegotiate a new one, it's like a drop of red food coloring into a drop of white paint. Now, one of the ways you can tell if you're out of integrity with yourself is if you're out of sorts. If you feel cranky, bored, emotional, just look to see where you might have slipped into a state of being out of integrity. Is there someone you need to apologize to? Is there someone you need to acknowledge that you've broken a commitment with them and then make a new agreement? Now, all of the agreements of this world, all of them, losing weight, getting married, staying married, accepting a job, staying at that job, leaving a job, walking every day, these are they're not unimportant, but they are secondary to your soul's commitments. They're secondary to this broader, bigger commitment that you have as a soul, as a being. And so in order to figure out what that is, besides just being loving, you almost will have to do the work of determining what you really, 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 really want. What feeds your soul? Here's how I do it. More than once, it's my kind of my go-to place. If I were to be on my deathbed next year, if I were to find out that my end of life is coming, I would want to make sure, I would ask myself the question, am I doing what I came here to do? Where am I compromising? Where am I putting up with unhappiness or lack of fulfillment? Where am I not living in alignment with or congruent with the things I really care about? Again, this is not mysterious. Many of us, we find ourselves in careers, like if your grandfather was a dentist and your father was a dentist, you might be a dentist simply because your grandfather was a dentist and your father was a dentist. And you might actually want to be an actor. Or you might be living in such a way that you don't feel very good, and what you really want to be doing is traveling, but you can't travel because you don't feel very good. Whereas if you made some adjustments to your diet or your sleep or your self-care, you would feel better so that you can do the things that would leave you feeling soul fulfilled. Am I making sense? So Christian D. Larson is a an author, and he wrote this thing, The True Order of Things. I'm going to share it with you. He says, to establish life in the physical only is to be materialistic. There will be no consciousness of the finer things of existence, and the understanding of things in general will be one-sided. In consequence, the mind cannot see anything as it really is and will make mistakes at every turn. He's saying to believe that your existence is only physical will leave you wanting. It will not be the full story of you. He says to live in the mental world only, so physical and mental, is to live in a world of abnormal feeling and misdirected imagination. True being cannot find its foundation in such a world. So before I go on, he's talking about the spiritual awareness that who you are is not a body and who you are is not a mind. We talked about this last week, right? The difference between the mind and the brain, that you are not your thoughts and you are not your body, that you are so much more than that. He says true being can be established only in a consciousness of truth and understanding. And truth and understanding can only be achieved when you become aware of who you are as a birthless, deathless, eternal being that is more, that is a body of consciousness that expresses itself into your being. So he concludes here by saying, when life is established in a spiritual state, the physical ceases to be materialistic, and the mental ceases to be a troubled sea of conflicting emotions. Last week we talked about, do you want your life to be like a raging ocean, or do you want your life to be like a summer lake? And that summer lake experience is accomplished by recognizing your eternal nature and living consistent with your soul's commitments for being incarnated in this body. He says, instead, the physical becomes an orderly expression of the pure, wholesome life of the soul, and the mental becomes a world of the richest thought and the most sublime feeling and the highest mental enjoyment. So every day that we're alive should not be fraught with so much worry and so much doubt and so much fear and so much insecurity and so much trying to fit in and so much people pleasing and so much not knowing what we're doing, why we're here, what our purpose is. We want to ask and answer the question, who am I and why am I here? What do I care about? What am I passionate about? And listen, we're like spokes on the bicycle. Some of us are here to care about children. Some of us are here to care about aging. Some of us are here to care about animals. Some of us are here to learn how to love more. Some of us are here to care about the trees. So if you're here, your soul has a reason for being here. And your whole purpose is to go within and discover that reason and live it. To be congruent with it, to be honest about it, to not care what people think. Jesus, I'm pretty sure Jesus or the Buddha, nobody walked around saying, do you like who I am? Do you care about what I care about? Do you approve of my message? No. Psh, we, we don't have to do that. You just need to express yourself in love, compassion, and kindness. And you do that, and you will have such a happy life, such a fulfilled life, such a healthy life. You'll be able to deal with anything life throws at you, any upset, any kerfuffle. You will feel so good in your being for being in integrity and congruence, both on the physical plane of existence and on the spiritual plane of existence. So that's my invite to you. So, well being is not a condition of the body, but it is reflected into the experience of your body through your consciousness. And so we come together here every Sunday night alive, to experience aliveness and to experience how to view everyday things rather than just through the eyes of the ego, through the eyes of the spirit as well. So tonight's lesson has been on what does integrity mean? It is not a moral, it is not about good or bad. In God, there is no good or bad. I know it's hard to believe because it sounds, if you were to study traditional religion, it looks like God thinks some things are good and some things are bad. All there is some things are in congruence with who we are and some things are not. And for when we're not, there are natural and inevitable consequences. It's called the law of cause and effect, or the law of karma. So how we bypass all of that is we determine what we're about, and then we live that way every day to the best of our ability. And of course, we will fall. We all make mistakes, and uh, we all trip up. We make missteps in life, but they're not death sentences. They're not. They're just a misstep, and you get right back on track, and you just be as true to yourself with a capital S, as you can possibly be. Yes? Yes. All right, that is our lesson for tonight. So good to be with you. So happy to see you all here. I'm not quite sure what next week's topic is, but I'll know by next Sunday. Between now and then, practice, begin seeing if you can, first of all, meditate more, because if you're not still, you're not going to hear your soul. Your soul requires silence. It requires separating yourself from the world for a minute. It requires looking into your heart space. It requires being open and willing to think a new thought and to try something new. And don't worry too much about the people around you or the news or all of that. That God and one is majority. So just turn within. If you want to, I haven't blogged in a while. I need to start writing again, hopefully soon. But if you want to sign up for my newsletter, you can do that on my website. You can also, my website is deniseschubert.com. You can see all of the past blogs, all of my travels to Africa. I've been to Africa 14 times, and I have wonderful animals there. If you want to support this ministry with your love offerings and donations or tithes, you can do that through PayPal, Zelle, or Venmo at revdschubert.com. Obviously, no obligation. This is free to all. And if you ever have any questions or want any counsel on how to move through a life situation that's tripping you up, or you want to simply just explore spiritual ideas on a more one-to-one basis, you can just contact me anytime at revdschubert.com, and I'll be happy to do that. So I'm going to pray us out, and so take a breath with me. So, again, thank you for joining me on this beautiful, still very hot in Florida Sunday night. And so turn within with me by closing your outer eyes and opening your inner eyes. We take a breath to remember that we are surrounded by, supported by, maintained and sustained by an intelligence, a beauty, and a wisdom that we call by many, many names, but we did not make ourselves. We did not create sunsets. We don't grow flowers. We are unique and individualized spiritual extensions of God. We are God in the flesh. We are spiritual beings having a human experience. And so I recognize in this moment that we are connected by a golden thread, uh, much like leaves on a tree, much like waves in an ocean. That we are connected to all each other, to all animals, to all insects, to all rocks, to all sunsets, to all stars. We are one. We live in a unity. And so our happiness is awaiting our recognition of this fact. Our peace of mind is awaiting our acknowledgement of oneness and unity. Our well-being is waiting for us to give up judgment and to give up comparison and to give up trying to win or be better than anyone else. Our entire experience of happiness, well-being, and authenticity is dependent on our being congruent with our nature, which is unconditional love and perfect peace. And we need to walk that walk, and we need to talk that talk in every relationship, every situation. And when we don't, we come right back on track and do. Therein lies the peace of God. And so I'm grateful. I'm grateful to come together every week just to remind us to remember and to establish a commitment to move into this coming week more loving, more kind, and more compassionate. And so for the love that's the truth between us, I do give thanks. We let this be together by saying, and so it is. Amen. Amen. All right, beloveds, so wonderful to be with you. Have a wonderful week. If I don't see you, I will see you next Sunday on Sunday Night Alive. Peace and blessings.